Today's podcast is brought to you by Jerry Robinson's Market Barometer, a powerful tool for investors who want to avoid the next major market downturn. Learn more at marketbarometer.org.
Friends, welcome to the Monday edition of Follow the Money Daily Radio, a podcast dedicated to your personal, spiritual, and financial freedom. My name is Jerry Robinson. I'm an economist, author of the book Bankruptcy of Our Nation, and I'm also the publisher at ftmdaily.com. You can also get there by typing in followthemoney.com. Many different ways, or just Google us, Follow the Money Daily. You'll find us. Very, very simple. And each and every day, we are here now doing a podcast on not just the topics of the day, but also financial education, financial freedom education, focusing also upon geopolitics, helping you understand what you need to know in this very trying time that we live in. And I'm so glad that you're joining us. Also joining me on today's podcast, as usual, is my wife and the national director of our Christian Financial Advisor Network. Her name is Jennifer. Jennifer, thanks for being here.
Yeah, Jerry, thanks for being here as well. We're having a great week, a great start to our Monday. Just a quick announcement to our Trigger Trade Pro members. We just launched this service a few weeks ago, and all of you out there listening, we just sent out an email to you last night with our new stock watch list. And so if you haven't had a chance to go and check your email, then be sure to do that and check out the stocks that Jerry and I are keeping an eye on this week.
Yeah, real excited about the Trigger Trade Pro software. We have some brand new things coming out, including a brand new stock watch alert. So if you want to have one of the stocks that we mentioned or one of the stocks that you're watching with our software and you want to be alerted as soon as it reaches a certain trigger price, it can instantly do that straight to your cell phone or, by text or by email. And so we're working on all that right now. That's expected to be ready in about 8 weeks or less. We're also coming up with a personalized stock watch list that you can have, lots of trading tutorials on video, just a lot of great stuff, a new traders forum where you can share trading ideas. Many of the folks in our audience are aspiring traders. Most of our audience at least have some exposure to investing. And so if you are one of those types of persons, if you're a kind of person who A, wants to learn to invest or is already an investor, B, wants to learn how to trade or you are already a trader, or C, someone who wants to finally break free from the rat race and adopt a brand new philosophy and begin creating multiple streams of income, you are among friends. Welcome to the FTM Daily community. We're so grateful to have you here. Now, today we're going to be talking about what's been happening in the Middle East, and we're also going to talk about a pretty interesting report that came out about how central banks are propping up the global stock markets, not just through their policies, but also by buying trillions of dollars worth of equities. And so we're going to be talking about that later in the program. But first, the news that came out of Iraq over the weekend did not get any better than it was last week. And you'll remember last Friday, we discussed the growing influence of ISIS in the Middle East, this small radical group, I should add, only somewhere between 3,000 and 7,000 fighters who have been running through Iraq with U.S. weapons, U.S. manufactured weapons, U.S. Humvees, powerful weapons, and running into many of these Iraqi cities and taking them over. We talked about this quite a bit last week. Well, so far over the weekend, we saw that fighters from ISIS took over a northwestern Iraqi city of Tal Afar just after about 2 days of heavy fighting. And then ISIS reportedly posted photos online claiming the mass execution of over 1,700 Shiite members of Iraq's security forces in the city of Tikrit. Now, the photos and the claims, again, they haven't been independently verified, but the photos themselves are horrifying. Of course, the U.S. has been forced to respond. The USS George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier 2 additional warships being deployed now into the Gulf. However, Washington has already stated that they will not deploy any ground troops to Iraq because I guarantee they couldn't get the support of the American people. The only way to get the support of the American people is to really use scare tactics. And they did send out one troll from Washington out to the Sunday shows this week to really whip up the scaremongering amongst the American people. And as always, it was the military-industrial complex's one of their top spokesmen, Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. He was on CNN show over the weekend, and here is what he had to say. Kind of shocking, even for Lindsey Graham. Roll the tape.
We need to put a red line with Iran. You know, you can help stabilize.
How do you do that?
Well, you just sit down and talk with them. We need to get Turkey
I'm sorry. It's sort of hard for me to believe that I'm hearing a Republican saying, sit down and talk with Iran.
Do you realize what's happening here? If Baghdad falls and the central government collapses in Iraq, the Iranians are the biggest winner. We're the biggest loser. ISIS, as Nick says, operates with impunity from Syria to Baghdad. They will hit us again. They will march on Jordan. 3 things very quickly. Put American air power into the game. These guys are not 10 feet tall. Stop the advance on Baghdad. Get people on the ground that the Iraqis trust. Maliki must go. Get a new government in place, right? And hit Syria. If you don't deal with Syria in a coordinated fashion, maybe with Turkey, regional Sunni Arab states, you'll have this happen all over again in Iraq.
So there you have Lindsey Graham doing what he always does and doing what he does best, and that is trying to move these weapons that are sitting on shelves out into the military field. I mean, you can't just make bombs and then not drop them on people, can you? I mean, you can't just make bombs and then just not drop them. You have to use them. And Lindsey Graham understands that. He realizes that a weapon that is just sitting idle is just kind of a waste of a good weapon. So therefore, he wants to take them over and go ahead and start lobbing them on Iraq. The only problem is, unfortunately for Mr. Graham, is that there is already several reports out of Washington stating that they don't even know who to hit. They don't even know where to drop the bombs. Now, why is that? Because they don't know who among ISIS are the ones that they've already supported, i.e. the United States supporting al-Qaeda in Syria. Not a conspiracy theory, but a solid fact. The United States supporting al-Qaeda in many different parts of the Middle East. And now with ISIS, the U.S. is saying, we don't know which ones of these thugs are ours and which ones of these thugs are not ours. So we don't know which ones to kill and which ones not to kill. We don't have any troops on the ground. We need to put boots on the ground. That way we can find out who are ours and who are not ours. Over the weekend, the State Department announced it is relocating a substantial number of its embassy staff that is currently in Baghdad, and it's going to be adding security personnel. Lord knows they don't want another Libya. They don't want another Benghazi unfolding in Baghdad or anywhere in Iraq. Now, what was also interesting about this week, and you heard it on the last clip that I just played with Lindsey Graham, is that even Republicans, even the GOP, is now saying that we need to talk and open up dialogue with the Iranians because Iran has a vested interest in protecting Iraq because Iraq has a Shiite government. Now, think about Iraq for a minute. It's breaking down. It is in this state of freefall. And if you look at the country demographically, you'll find that the southern part of Iraq is a highly concentrated Shia population. Now, as you move up a little higher, maybe to the middle of the country, you'll find that there is a huge area of Sunni Muslims. And then the further you get north, the more you get up into Kurdistan, where you have the Kurdish people, who are not even Arabic people. And they have a long time claim to those areas up there. In fact, Kirkuk, which they just recently conquered, is their capital. And Kurdistan has been doing a lot of business with Turkey, selling oil from Iraq to Turkey. And, of course, this has been hacking off Baghdad because Baghdad doesn't recognize Kurdistan's right to be selling Iraqi oil. So Iraq really wants a strong central government, as does Iran. Iran wants Iraq to have a strong central Shiite government. But there are others who don't want Iraq to have a strong Shiite government. And these especially include, obviously, the ISIS fighters who are Sunni, but also not just those, but those who are actually funding ISIS. And who are they? Well, just do a quick Google search and you'll quickly discover from mainstream sources that Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Kuwait and other Gulf powers are the number one financier of ISIS. The Saudis, by the way, are the world's number one financier and exporter of global terrorism. No doubt about it. They have been busted funneling weapons and money to terrorists in Pakistan. They have been busted funneling money and weapons to rogue terrorists in Syria and in Iraq. And it is well known that they are funding and financing ISIS currently. The way that the whole thing works over there, we'll have to do a show on that sometime, but in essence, the Kuwaiti financial system in Kuwait is so loose and so lax that the Gulf countries in this area all simply poured and funnel their money through the Kuwaiti banking system, and then from Kuwait, it goes out to the world. It goes out to Syria, it goes out to Iraq, it goes out to Pakistan, it goes out to Afghanistan, wherever they need help. And in fact, the Daily Beast, which is a mainstream news website, has a story this weekend entitled, "America's Allies Are Funding ISIS." Can you imagine if ISIS were being funded by North Korea? Can you imagine the rhetoric that would be pouring out of Washington if ISIS were funded by Iran? Or what about Russia? What if Putin was the one who was behind ISIS? Oh, the media would love that, wouldn't they? Barack Obama would be talking about how we need to bomb one of these countries. No, it's not Iran. It's not Russia. It's not North Korea that is funding these ISIS terrorists that photographed 1,700 Shiite members of Iraq's security forces after they were executed en masse. But instead, it's just the Saudis. It's just the Saudis. And even more ironic, the Saudis used what to pay for it? U.S. dollars. Where do they get the U.S. dollars? From the oil exports that they send out thanks to the petrodollar system. So they have used U.S. dollars to finance the parade of terror through the streets of war-torn Iraq. The U.S. knows this. The world knows this. Even the Prime Minister of Iraq, obviously very well familiar with this, and has confronted and lambasted the Saudis and the Gulf powers for supporting such rogue terrorism within his country. Now, why would the Saudis want to support ISIS? Well, ISIS is Sunni. Pretty soon we are going to come to the realization, hopefully, in this country and in this whole war on terror, that much of what's occurring over there is a sectarian divide between Sunnis and Shiites. And we've known this for a long time, but it seems as if we still think in terms of countries, like it's Iran or it's Iraq or it's Syria or it's Saudi Arabia. But in essence, what you really have here are two factions of Islam, Sunni and Shia, and they are at each other's throats, something fierce. Now, the absolute hubris and folly of the Iraq war has now come full circle. We fully see this now, don't we? Everyone can see the folly of us moving into Iraq underneath the pretense of a 9/11 strike, which later Bush admits that Saddam Hussein and Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. It turns out that, in fact, it had something else altogether to do with the fact that they were not using their oil on the dollar standard, but except they were using the euro. So we now come full circle and we see the absolute folly of going into Iraq in the first place. And now it is descending. And now it is breaking apart. In fact, many analysts are now reporting that Iraq is at risk of breaking apart and being partitioned, just the way that I described earlier about how we have Shias in the north or in the south, Kurds in the north, and Sunnis right in the middle. And the Saudis would love nothing more than to have a nice, safe bastion in Iraq to be able to station their troops themselves, maybe with some bombs, right next to Iran. And Iran obviously knows this, and they do not want the Saudis gaining a foothold in Iraq because it would represent something very negative. And what is really amazing is you're getting ready to hear Lindsey Graham, who is so concerned. He's so concerned about how all of this could play out, and yet not a word about those who are funding ISIS. Listen for the word Qatar. Listen for the word Kuwait. Listen for the country Saudi Arabia. You won't hear it. What is this? This is the protection of the petrodollar system at work. And this, my friends, another clip from Lindsey Graham telling us that if we don't bomb Syria, and that if we don't bomb Iraq, and if we don't put people in the area and take your sons and daughters and put them in the Middle East again, then another 9/11 is going to happen. But this time, it's going to be much worse. Roll the tape.
The number of people that could die in this country from getting this wrong is going to be far greater than 4,000 because they're getting weapons they didn't have before. The economic chaos to the world is going to be far greater than this, and the money we spent in saving Iraq. This is another 9/11 in the making. The FBI director has warned us in Congress that Syria and Iraq present a direct threat to our homeland. You got foreign fighters from America and Western Europe occupying this battle space. They're operating with impunity. Get involved with air power, stop the march toward Baghdad, deal with Syria, but get a new government in place as quickly as you can that will bring the Iraqis back together for a counteroffensive.
Senator,
if we don't, God help us, because we're next.
So there you have the war-mongering and the fear-mongering from one of the top warmongers in the GOP, Lindsey Graham. I think he's probably only topped by John McCain. John McCain is probably the only other GOP figurehead out there who loves war more than Lindsey Graham. And Lindsey Graham, by the way, was ready to bomb Iran, but now if you listen to what he said earlier in this clip, now he wants to talk to Iran because, look, to Lindsey Graham, it's basically like this. As long as bombs get to be dropped, it doesn't matter on who. So we'll work with Iran if we can drop bombs on Iraq, or we'll work with Iraq if we can drop bombs on Iran, or we'll work with Iran if we can drop bombs on Syria. But bombs never fall on Saudi Arabia, even though 15 of the 19 hijackers came from Saudi Arabia. Bombs never fall on those areas until you hear a news headline, and it'll be coming probably within the next, 3 or 4 years, maybe less, maybe 3 or 4 months. Who knows? I mean, I have no idea. But you'll see it. It'll come out and it'll say the Saudis are going to price their oil in gold or in some other currency. And I promise you, within 48 hours, or maybe even before that headline comes out, because the U.S. will get a running start at it, you will see the absolute destruction of Saudi Arabia in the mainstream media. It will be merciless. You won't believe it. We thought they were our friend. And as we've been telling you over and over, friends, wake up. It's time to wake up. Money talks. Wake up. Stop listening to the mainstream press. They're lying to you. And this is getting very dangerous now, because now we have thugs running through the streets with U.S.-made weapons, U.S. Humvees. They're driving our Humvees, using our weapons, killing Iraqi civilians, just like they did in Syria. Now, I'm not suggesting that the best course of action is just to retreat and do nothing. But what I am suggesting is that everything that we have been told to do up until this point has failed. So perhaps it's time to take advice and lessons from someone else. Perhaps it's time to let somebody else dictate, because these same guys got us into this mess in the first place, and now they're telling us we got to go back. It's time to wake up, friends. It is time to wake up.
Jerry, the S&P 500 right now is sitting at about 1936, really right where it opened for the week. It's flat right now. What are your thoughts on the market?
Well, no doubt about it. The S&P 500 is the number one gauge of the U.S. stock market for international investors, global hedge funds, and things of that nature. So we watch the S&P 500 like a hawk. We watch for it to remain within its uptrend. And, of course, we have about 10 different metrics we apply to the S&P 500 every single day. And we use that to determine our market barometer signal. So all of our subscribers have access to that market barometer where it's green if the overall trend is moving in the right direction. Remember, all markets move in three trends, up, sideways, and down. And, of course, there are secondary trends, primary trends, but I'm talking about the general direction of these trends. And right now, the market has been going up. And there's no doubt about it. I mean, there was a story that was put out this weekend, pretty shocking to people who believe this to be a conspiracy. We've been saying this now for some time, that central banks and major hedge funds and public sector institutions piling money into these markets. A new research publication put out by the Official Monetary and Financial Institutions Forum, that's a mouthful, put out a report showing that 400 public sector institutions in 162 different countries now hold $29.1 trillion worth of investments. And the report looked at 157 central banks, 156 public pension funds, 87 sovereign funds, and all of this major money has flowed into these equity markets. And again, this is purely unsustainable. The only reason that central banks are so heavily weighted now in the markets is because of these low interest rates, and they have to earn money as well. So this is a very interesting thing, showing you that this equity market around the world is just flush with money. And, of course, that demand has driven these prices to where they are. This demand doesn't stay here forever. You cannot have this continual demand because, remember, money flows to the rate of highest return. It always does. That's where money flows. And so whatever is providing the highest rate of return is where the money is going to go. Especially, we could even further refine that statement to say that money flows to the rate of highest return with the lowest risk. And so whenever interest rates begin to move back higher, a lot of the interest in the equity markets is going to go down. And that's troubling because currently volume in the equity markets, in the U.S. equity markets, Europe equity markets, has been low, historically low for that matter. So, the fact that these banks and so many of these public institutions have so much money piled into these equity markets globally means that we only have further to fall. Jennifer, where are gold and silver at currently?
Gold is at $1,274. Jerry, silver is at $1,968.
Yeah, gold and silver, worth watching right here. Gold is recently at a 3-week high, basically on the fears that are unfolding in Iraq, boosting demand for a safe haven. And silver is also another one that has been trying to break out of the malaise that it's been in. Also, oil near a 9-month high. I don't know if you have the price on that handy.
Yeah, oil prices continue to rise. Right now, it's $106.91, up from last week even.
Yeah, that's the West Texas Intermediate. And there's two different prices to look at. There's the crude oil, the Brent crude, which is normally higher, and then you have your West Texas Intermediate crude. And the West Texas Intermediate, which you just gave me a price on, about 106, yeah, that's nearly a 9-month high. And again, it's on the violence in Iraq. So we're keeping our eyes on this stuff. No doubt that our PACE portfolio, precious metals, agriculture, commodities, and energy, does well in an environment like this. So we are enjoying the gains. If you'd like to learn more about all of that, you can find out all of our different services and products online at ftmdaily.com/store, ftmdaily.com store. Well, friends, I guess that brings us to the end of our program. Once again, another show in the archive. This is a really good time every single day right here. Follow the Money Daily. Tell your friends about this podcast. It's a brand new podcast. You know, we've been doing this on a weekly basis for a long time, for years, but we've decided to take it daily. Part of the reason is because the events that are heating up around the globe are becoming so pronounced and so obvious that we can no longer do this on a weekly basis. We have to be watching this stuff on a daily basis. Leave you today with a final word from the book of Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 3. It says, "The wise person foresees evil and hides himself, but the simple man passes on and is punished." Be wise, my friends, and until tomorrow, God bless.
All of the information contained on Follow the Money is strictly for informational and educational purposes. The views and opinions of our guests and sponsors, including Tom Cloud and Jay Peroni, are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of FTMDaily.com or Robinson Media Group, LLC. Jerry and Jennifer Robinson do hold their insurance licenses and may offer consulting on life insurance and fixed retirement income products. Jennifer Robinson is an investment advisor representative with Faith-Based Investor, LLC. Remember, never do your financial planning through podcast or radio. It's your money. Be wise. Do your due diligence and always consult a trusted financial professional before making any financial decision.